What's up, guys? My name's Craig. This is the Bass Lessons Melbourne Player Profile, and today I'm joined by Pete Griffin.
Hi. Nice to meet you, man.
And you, man.
Hi,
Thanks. We're at the Forum
Yes.
in Melbourne with
This
Dethklok.
nice sterile white dressing room. But, it's the best we could do today.
Yeah, and this is the end of the tour.
Yes, it is. We're flying home tomorrow, but it's really been amazing here. I love this country so much. I first came here about 20 years ago, more actually, with Hanson when I was first playing with them. And in Melbourne, we recorded a live album out at the Palais out in St. Kilda.
All right, that's where that was recorded.
Yeah. So I've got some history with this country, and was very excited to be able to come back because it's been, I think, since maybe 2008 or 2010, I think was the last time I was here. So
Like 15 years.
yeah, really. So, and not much has changed. I still love it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
And how's the tour been? What's
it's fantastic.
yeah,
It's-
first time for Dethklok.
Yeah, first time for Dethklok really leaving North America. Like we've done Canada and America. We did a
UK?
Mexico Fest. No, I haven't done that yet. We're doing it in June. We're doing only like 4 or 5 shows, a couple festivals, and some some one-offs. But it's just so cool. Like this thing that Brendan's created has taken on its own life, and he, the show got canceled sort of, and then the fans brought it back, and it's really, especially it's been around for almost 20 years. So a lot of the people we're meeting grew up with it. In a lot of ways, a lot of these younger people that we see at the show, like that was their introduction to metal and how ridiculous it all is, but also endearing and welcoming. It's really kind of cool to see it all full circle like that.
Yeah, I reckon, because I was going to ask you, what do you reckon, or why do you reckon it's been so enduring for something that on the surface could be kind of, somewhat throwaway? It's a
Right.
cartoon, metal show cartoon.
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And I've said this a lot. It's basically because the songs are way better than they need to be. Yes, there's a song called Bloodrocuted about your blood getting electrocuted, but it's actually kind of awesome. And there's one that we do a lot called Go Into the Water, which is about, the creatures of the sea coming on, taking over the land. And it's all so ridiculous, but there's like some moments in it, like the very last line is "we swim home." And like that kind of gets me every time, like in a weird emotional way of like a person who tours all the time and then we got to swim home. And I'm like, wait, am I getting misty eyed about a Dethklok song right now? Like what's wrong with me? But it's because Brendan Small, the creator of the show, went to Berkeley and was kind of a musician first and then got into comedy and then figured out this crazy way of smushing it all together in this amazing package that has really become a life of its own.
It's kind of amazing that it got made at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then was globally successful.
Right.
It's great.
And that alone is just inspiring. Like just believing in yourself and you're creating your own thing.
Yeah.
And standing behind it and knowing it's ridiculous and then pushing it forward and
But it's like if you think it's cool and you believe in it, chances are
right.
somebody else will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges with the live show? When I was watching you soundcheck, I was like, that's really dark. Like,
Yes, that's a
lights
big one.
on stage.
Very good point. Yeah, knowing that. In between songs, it's pitch black. So in the days before Lumen Lay in your fret dots, we would and Brian Beller's done the gig for many years too. He and I sort of do it about 50-50 these days. He told me he would put a piece of tape on the back of his neck at certain frets, so he would know in the darkness. Just to feel it. The Lumen Lay thing really helps. Obviously, they sort of glow pretty nicely.
So do you have lumen lays on yours?
Yes, yeah. The Dingwall didn't come with it, but one of my techs put it in for me, which was great. And I'm like, every bass should have this now. It's you don't need the LEDs or anything, but then you just charge it with the flashlight. Yeah, exactly. Charge it with the flashlight ahead of time, and then it glows for most of the gig, cool. and that really helps. And then the other part of it is it's relentless. There's barely 5 seconds between the end of one song and the next one. And if you don't know what's coming, and if you're trying to go for a water when you shouldn't be, it can really kind of catch you off guard. And so it's that's the breathlessness of it all is sort of as much a challenge as anything.
Like just the concentration.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, finish that song. I know what's coming next. I'm switching between picking fingers on some stuff, so I got to do a little dancing with the pedals.
Tuning?
For different tunes. Sorry?
Do you do different tunings?
Yeah, for one song, we have it a little different, but otherwise it's C standard. So it's C, F, B flat, E flat of the 4 strings. I'll still tune in fourths. But what's funny is anytime we go, oh, what note are you playing? We speak in E because I'm not going to reharmonize, like it makes my head hurt to even think about that. And it doesn't always work like that. But when you're dealing with guitars, you can at least, stick to which fret is that? Oh, normally that would be a G, but now it's an E flat, and okay, it makes your head hurt. So let's just keep it with what we know.
Yeah.
But it's really amazing. I used to try to do it with normal strings, and then I started using these Dunlop 55s, which are perfect for it. It really feels, it's not floppy at all.
So you're just playing the 4-string?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, two different 4 strings. The main one is just that Dingwall. I also have a Dunnable that I like a lot for this stuff, but I didn't want to bring both out.
Yeah.
Because traveling with instruments these days, we all know and have seen the horror stories and stuff. So I try not to bring too many irreplaceable and or expensive things. So my spare bass is a Squier that I've like modded a bit and actually really dig, but it's a $200 Squier Sonic bass, and if something happens to it, I'll go,
You can replace it anywhere in the world.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it sounds fine. And sometimes it's even kind of fun fighting with the instrument a little bit, not on this gig, honestly, but on some other ones where it's like, it makes you slow down or not use a certain part of the neck and things like that. And sometimes that's enough to keep things interesting.
Sometimes, I think that's just the character of a P bass in general. A lot of times,
Right.
is it makes you kind of play not jazz bassy.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Everything's a little just fatter, and you got to let it ring out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's what's really been amazing about this gig, and especially my sort of more recent approach to it, is for years, Gene Hoglan, god of metal drumming, who plays with this band since the beginning, has been telling me, hey, when everybody else in the band is going, digga, 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 you should be going, da, 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 da. And I'm like, but I can do it. I can play fast. Check it out. And he goes, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like it's muddy. It just, if everyone's doing it and we're not completely perfectly tight, it's just going to get in the way. And I'm like, okay. And then I saw, I've been to a lot of metal shows, obviously. And I started noticing on the ones where you see the guy working real hard on the bass, playing all the riffs, all the stuff, all the triple finger thing or the extra picking, and you don't really hear any of it. And it's just kind of like blended into everything else.
Especially if the kick is doing it.
Exactly.
Like
It's in the same frequency range. You got to kind of find your low mid and high mid kind of just above it, and then scoop out some other stuff. And then I realized it's really more about, it's this new kind of mantra I have. It's presence or absence. Right? It's like people, I tell my students this all the time. It's why I tell them to not stop playing. People notice the lack of bass more than they notice incorrect or maybe not completely doing the same thing as anybody else. They either know when it's there or when it's not, right? And that seems like oversimplifying in some ways, but for something like this where I'm not the focus, the lead singer of the band is really Gene's feet, right? Like those kick drums are like, smacking everybody in the face all night. So my job is to support all of that as like the artillery. And it's really just in the last year or so, I've finally really embraced it. And it, from the stage level, at least, I'm pretty sure it sounds great in the audience too, but make it so that I feel like each of my notes is that much more important rather than all the stuff, all the extra attacks of each one. And then also a bass note is a big wave, right? So if you're hitting too many of them, you don't actually hear the note kind of show up. So it's really, part of it is the whole work smarter, not harder thing. And, I'm not tearing out my forearm so much, but I think it also almost forces the front of house guy to give you a little more love in the mix, because you're not overplaying. You're not doing everything where if you're a little off, it's getting in the way. So it's really been this kind of, reinvention of my playing just because of this. And now I'm taking that to when I do other stuff too, and kind of in some situations be like, what's the actual least I can play here and still get the point across and have those notes be that much more weighty. And it's really exciting to me in some ways. You know, I've done all this chopsy stuff and never really loved the whole look how many notes I can play sort of thing. I luckily got over that when I was in my 20s. So it's more about what are you doing with it? How are you supporting what's going on and everything? So it's I thank Gene so much for you know telling me over and over and over again. Really, like he'd even kind of be a little snarky about it. He'd be like, "Really, you're playing that much on that tune? You sure about that?" And I'd be like, "All right, Gene, okay." And then I do less and be like, "Damn, that really does sound better."
He has done a lot of
everything.
Like I'm a massive strapping young lad fan.
Me too. That was where it came from. Byron Stroud from that band.
Yeah.
It apparently was doing that same thing in that whole thing. And what's really incredible is when you listen to the records, and hopefully when you hear us live, it sounds like I'm hitting all those notes because there's the bass note and then the kicks are being the attack of each one. So if I'm just getting out of the way, that note shows up a lot more and rattles your chest a little more.
There's probably like something to do with just the size of the string as well. Like there's probably like a max velocity where you could pick a string and get back to to picking it again.
Yeah.
In order for that string to speak, especially at the lower.
Yes, with the down tunings. Yeah. It's and you know, tone is obviously a huge part of it. You don't want to go too distorted because then it just kind of blends into the background, but you need some of that clankiness to get the initial note to come out. But you do want the warmth of the actual, you know, pitch that shows up later to be the story.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I mean, we had a quick look at your pedal board before. Like, getting the tone for this, was that something you'd done before, or was it kind of like, did Brian kind of point you in the right direction?
A little bit, yeah, he definitely did. He and I, it's amazing. Brian and I have done a lot of the same gigs and played a lot of the same music, and we have very different approaches, which is really kind of fun. Like, especially when we are in the same room at the same time, and we're like, oh, he'll try my bass and I'll try his, and we'll both be like, oh, okay. Like, so I'm using those sort of drop tuning strings. He uses a BEAD tuned up. So there's like extra tension, right? And he has like some pretty low action, and I picked it up and I was like, oh, okay, I see how this works. Cool, I get it, you know. And it's really kind of awesome seeing different paths to the same goal and everything. And he doesn't play with a pick all that much, but he does the 3-finger thing.
That would require probably quite a light attack.
Right. Yeah.
I would find it hard to kind of not dig in with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. But his tone is pretty amazing, and his playing is obviously incredible and untouchable. But I having to reinvent some of his parts, and I've also been playing with Mike Keneally and Beer for Dolphins, which was Beller's gig for a long, long time, and I'm sure he'll come back to it at some point. So learning a lot of his stuff from that, which is some of the hardest music I've ever had to play.
Really?
I'm like, and Brian's so amazing. He's given me tabs for the stuff and his transcriptions and all that, and I'll be grateful for it. But then I'll also be like, I can't play it where you played it. Like, yes, I see you're telling me the fret that you played it on, but that doesn't work for me. So I got to move it somewhere else or rearrange it or something like that. It's really been kind of fun filtering that through my own thing and then seeing how he does it again. And so he and I have had a really cool back and forth with a lot of this stuff. So.
And then the tone thing, the sound.
Yes. Yeah. He,
for the pedals.
Yeah. He basically, it's just different levels of gain, kind of, and how much you need at any particular point. And then, like I was showing you, there are moments where when the two guitars are both doing a lead, where we have a little more space. So a lot of times I'll put on either like a more thrashy distortion or an upper octave thing, or both, really. And that kind of fills in that space and makes it sound like there's a rhythm guitar player also playing while they're doing like the cool Queen sort of double lead or Maiden kind of thing. Yeah. So it's really kind of fun. It's really, that's been pretty amazing. Just getting my tone right for it, and like we were saying before, finding where it is just above the kick and where it speaks without getting swallowed. And
Because ultimately it makes it easier to play. Right?
absolutely, yeah. I don't have to hit so hard, and then using in-ear monitors and getting your mix right, and that's pretty huge too. So.
And you're running Ashdown
Yep,
rigs?
that's all my career, man. On tours like this, we're using backline, and so everybody tours is using backline unless you're in a bus, really. And no one's flying with an amp anymore. But every time I see that it's Ashdown, I walk up and I give it a little hug because I know I can set it flat and you can count off the song. I don't have to sit there and twist a knob and go, what does this do?
Yeah,
you know, like I don't know what that 3 letters means. So now I got to play 3 notes, move it a little bit, play 3 notes. Well, what are we doing? Well, it's a sweep of this mid range. Okay, cool. Sorry, guys. You know, like
so you've been using Ashdown for
literally my whole career. Yeah. And what's amazing is it works for all of these different things. It's the 2B goodness that I like, but it's not overly, swampy or anything, you know. It really maintains a clarity that I don't get from other amps. So they've been amazing for me.
You never been amp curious or anything?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what's cool is, you know, doing the backline thing, you get to try almost all these different ones, and I've found that there are a lot of the ones that are standards without naming names. That everyone else is like, oh, that's great. That's what's here. I'm like, oh God, really? This again? Okay, hold on, because they're not so consistent from unit to unit. And especially in a backline situation, who knows the last time it was serviced or how those tubes are doing or anything. So with the Ashdowns, I'm in general, like they're very, very
And is it
reliable.
solid state or is it?
No, it's tubes. Yeah, Ashdowns.
It's
I forget which ones, but yeah, and it's usually about 500 or 600 watts depending on the model.
And just a 410?
Yep. Yeah, so far. I mean, part of it is because we have the giant screen behind us, so they don't want stacks of cabs getting in the way, where you'll see tonight we're in the complete dark from the front. You don't really see our faces at all. We're kind of like backlit.
Right.
So the show is really on the screen behind us, so we want to give people the view as much as anything else. So
it's awesome.
yeah.
You started out when you were about 13, is that right? Playing
Yeah,
bass?
that was when I first got my bass. Yeah.
And you had a mentor who passed away kind of when you were young.
Yeah. Dan Bingley. He was a senior when I was a freshman in high school, and I had played trumpet and then got a bass and liked it. And then I saw him slapping, and I was like, what is that? That's the coolest thing I've ever. Show me that, please. Teach me. And then I took some lessons from him, and like many young students, he was trying to teach me valuable theory and all this other stuff. I'm like, don't care. It's how do you do that? Show me, please show me. And then unfortunately, when he was just about 19, he passed away right when he had gotten to college.
Oh, jeez.
And it really sort of forced me to go, well, if this incredibly talented dude, I still think every day what he would be doing had he been around. If he didn't get to do it, I have to. Right, I have a fraction of the talent that he had, but I have the drive that he gave me from seeing him. So let's do it. And now his family actually gave me his bass maybe about 10 years ago.
Oh,
it's
wow.
this Japanese P bass that I freaking love. I had been a J bass player up until that point when I was playing with Dweezil and the Hanson guys. It was mostly J basses. And then I got that thing, and just the way it dominates the low end and the thicker neck, and especially for the slapping thing, having a little more space between strings so you're not hitting the wrong one. And it completely kind of reinvented my playing. And the thing is pretty beat up. Like, he had stickers on it and the finish is coming off, and I'm not going to change a thing about it.
No,
you know,
because that all reminds you of him.
Yeah, exactly. His DNA is still in there. And I'm still really good friends with all the guys that were in his band and his family, and they know that I still have the complete reverence for him and the instrument that he learned it all on. And I still occasionally, I'll play some riff and be like, oh no, I stole that from Dan. There it is.
It's amazing how some things you learn in those formative years of the first 4 or 5 years of playing. Sometimes those licks just come out and you're like, yeah, I've been doing that for 30 years.
Yeah, there it is again. Yeah, but it works, you know. So,
and what was college like?
I went to Northwestern University. It was I went to the music school there, but it was I got like a general music degree. I didn't get a bass degree. I got just a Bachelor of Arts in music.
Yep.
So I took a lot of general arts and science classes too, which made my parents happy that it wasn't so just music. But what was cool about it was I was surrounded by incredibly smart people all the time. All my best friends that I still have from there are like, they're valedictorian. Now they're champions of industry and running cities and working in cabinets of the government a couple of years back and stuff. So just being around other incredibly smart, driven people was great. And then also doing the music thing. The school itself was a bit more classically oriented than I was prepared for. And what really blew my mind was you could put a piece of music in front of these like oboe players or viola players. They would sight read it and it would be flawless. And then you'd ask them to jam an A and they'd look at you like you were insane. And I'm like, wait, you don't just pick up the instrument and like mess around and like just play it? They're like, no, I have a practice regimen. I do that. And I was like, okay. So I was envious of one skill and of theirs, and they're envious of a skill of mine. And it's sort of like, well, can't we meet in the middle here? And I'm not the best reader, but it's gotten a lot better. And I try to, especially with a lot of my students when they're, I'm just learning songs. I'm like, that's great. It's a good start. But what are you doing? What's your voice? What is actually the stuff that you want to make? What are you doing differently than everybody else? It's been done, right? And especially in like the cover band scene and all that. It's not that you want to completely veer away, but a big part of it is finding your own voice on the instrument. And that really only comes from messing around, and taking chances.
Yeah.
And what notes do I like? What notes don't I like? What tones do I like? What tones don't I like? And it really kind of comes full circle with all of that. So that was in Chicago. And then once I graduated from there, I just moved to LA.
Yeah, right. The whole like exploring the instrument thing, I think that's something that I did as well because I loved the bass.
Right.
I was like, get home from school and just play. I didn't come up with little ideas and stuff.
That was high school for me. I was a really good student until my parents got me the bass, and then like there were moments where the biology textbook is face down on the bed, and I'm learning Zeppelin songs off the radio, and loving it. And I'd get back to the bio homework, but so just training the ears. I don't know if you guys can hear the rumbling of the next band's sound checking, but this is the metal world. It's all double kicks all the time.
Speaking of double kicks, how did the Hanson gig come around?
Right. Yeah, nice transition. Through auditions, through this guy.
So you moved out. You just moved to LA.
Moved to LA.
Like sight unseen. Did you have?
Pretty much. No, I had visited, and I had a couple friends out here, but not really out there, but not really any connections. And I managed to start working at the Musicians Institute as a TA, which was actually a really kind of awesome grad school of sorts, where I was running from a guitar class to a drum class to a degree class to a composition class, and just playing bass with all of them.
All right, cool.
A lot of like playing bass with crappy drummers actually gets your time to be really, really good, because I'd have to stick to the click while they would be maybe not. And so I'd have to like really shut down and be like, nope, I'm right, and then also reading a lot of different stuff and playing different styles. And through that, I met a guy named Barry Squire, who also actually just recently passed away. And he would organize auditions for all these artists. And especially back in the early 2000s, there was a lot more money in the music industry for these sort of budding artists. Yeah, exactly. And so he would set up the audition, have 20 to 50 people for each instrument come in. They'd pick somebody. And more than half the time, I'd either get the gig or get called back to the gig, or I know the person that got it. And then they'd go into a rehearsal period and all stuff. And then you'd never hear them again. Right. Like the label would shelve the record because they didn't see it making billions or something. And it was a really bizarre time. But one of those gigs was Hanson. And I was just looking to work, I certainly, I can't say I was a fan of them beforehand, but like that song was undeniable, and inescapable.
Was it around that time?
No, it was after they were mega famous. It was right after their second album, right before their third album came out. And what was super interesting at the time was they were trying to get off of their label deal with Island Def Jam. They were one of the first known artists to go, what do we need you guys for? You're just getting in the way. Yeah, they were on Island Def Jam. Yeah. And they say that their second album, the reason they kind of had issues with them was their second album didn't get the push that they would have wanted because that money went to The Thong Song by Cisco. So there's the history of it for you.
Money well spent. You know,
I guess,
that was
kind
a
of a crime against music. But so it was really interesting watching them at the time kind of realize this thing that we all now know of, and it was before, you know, Bandcamp and all the other distribution things, but they had the connections, they had the fan base, and they did the math. I remember they had a whole documentary about it, but they were like, all right, so if we're on the label and we sell millions of records, we might get 50 cents per CD sold. If we do it our way and we sell tens to hundreds of thousands, we get $6.50 per CD for $15 CD sold. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, when you break it down.
And people talk about the streaming industry ripping off musicians.
Right.
We've forgotten that
back then
they've been getting ripped off forever.
And again, because of that whole label thing, there's so many people above the musician that needs to be making money off of it and then recouping and all that crazy stuff. So they were really the kind of the trailblazers of getting out of those shackles and doing what they want, and they're still doing it to this day. You know, it's kind of amazing.
Great musicians, great songwriters,
really great. And they're when they would start harmonizing, they have 3-part harmony on everything. It was just an amazing thing to be a part of, you know. And they just do it so easily, and it was great. And it taught me how to tour too, which is its own skill.
Nice touring.
And pretty good, yeah. I was very spoiled that I went straight to bus touring and to everyone in the crowd knowing every word to every song.
Yeah,
and
it would probably be a killer band like Studio.
Yeah. The other guys that they had hired were good, and I know I've met some of the bass players that they've had after me who are also badass. So they know what they're doing for sure. And then luckily I got the audition for Dweezil's band. So that was how I kind of left Hanson, and I was like, look guys, you know, this is kind of a dream come true. They were like, absolutely. What are you talking? Why are you even here talking to us? Like, go do that, please. You know, they were super happy for me.
And which one was more rock and roll?
I don't know, maybe Hanson in some way, you know, like they were more about putting on a show and all that stuff. You know, the Zappa stuff is a little more nerdy, for lack of a better term, but I'm the biggest Zappa fan you could find. So that was a dream come true that I never even imagined could be a dream to come true, right? Frank had been dead for the entire time.
Was this the beginning of Zappa playing?
Yes, the initial, the very first tour in 2006. I was in it from 06 till the end of 2011. So I got some good time in there, and then had to move on to other things.
And was it with Zappa Play Zappa you won the Grammy?
Yes. Yep.
What was that like?
Well, it was the song "Peaches and Regalia," which is an instrumental. It's a Grammy category that no longer exists, which I guess makes it even more rare, for best rock instrumental. And the bass line on that song, is like 3 minutes of pure genius. It's kind of untouchable. It was my entrance to Zappa when I heard Fish cover it poorly, but it's in the real book too, and inaccurately, but it's there.
Like most other things.
Mostly, exactly. But if you're smart enough, you kind of, like with anything, you know how to pick out and use your own ears to tell the difference. But yeah, so it was from a live album that we did, and we had Steve Vai with us and Terry Bozzio, although Terry didn't play on that particular song. And that song in particular, the bass line to it is Shuggie Otis playing bass, who's mostly known for being a guitar player. Yeah, I did not know that. And I tried to like do my version of it. And I talk about everything being a knob in music. It's not a switch. It's not a yes or no question. It's how much, right? So when you're learning another part, I think of me on one side and them on the other, and where am I putting that knob? And for that one, I went all the way to him. And I was able to get the isolated tracks, which is still so cool because our drummer is the Vaultmeister. So he's in charge of all of Frank's recordings ever. So I have on my computer just the bass and drums for Peaches and Regalia. And if I had tried to just follow the chord changes and kind of make up my own parts to that, every time I was doing it, it's like, why doesn't this sound right? And I listened to what he did on the original thing, and it's so weird. And some of it makes zero harmonic sense for what's happening over the chords, but it's the coolest thing ever. And so it's one of the few times I really went 100% what's already
so
there.
So integral to the song.
Exactly. And as a fan, I was like, this isn't coming off if I don't do that. And now everything else, I drifted a little back towards the me side.
Yeah.
But that one in particular, it was like, nope, got to be exactly that. And so really, it's as much a Grammy for Frank and that song as anything else, because we were real, and we had the rehearsal time to do it. And Dweezil was very much into us being incredibly accurate and all those things.
You have to be.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to stand behind what presenting that music.
How do you assimilate that amount of musical information?
Jeez, it's with the Zappa stuff. I was incredibly lucky that I had at least heard most of it.
Right.
I didn't necessarily know how to play it, but the other guys in the band it was more of like a new gig for them. They were familiar, but not as they didn't have the 60
So
CDs.
you've been listening to them since you were
teenager.
Right.
Like it was.
Was that through family or?
Yeah, and through Dan Bingley and other older musicians that I hung out with in high school. They're like, check this out, and so it was pretty incredible. So the other guys in the band, Dweezil would be like, all right, we're going to start working on whatever song tomorrow. And me and Joe, the drummer, because he obviously knows this stuff really well, we just kind of start playing it or like singing it. And these guys have to go home and listen to it for the first time ever. And so they're like,
But was there transcriptions for it? Because I know
Not really.
Because I thought Frank wrote a lot of stuff.
we all thought that too. But it at the time, I think they've done better now. It wasn't cataloged as well as it could have been. So we were more off of the occasional separated track, which is huge, right? And then we all, even back then, I still use it to this day, this program called Transcribe, which is one of those slow down things without changing the pitch. And it's got a really powerful EQ on it. So you can hit bass select and it just drops everything above a certain frequency. It doesn't sound exactly like bass, but it takes away some of this stuff, and then you drop it to 50% and you slowly move it up, and I still get excited about it to this day when I'm learning new difficult stuff, where the first time you hear it and you're like, nope, that's not happening. It's never happening. And then you're like, no, hold on. We've done this before, buddy. Come on. And then you slow it down, you slowly creep it back up, and then you're like, wow, I'm doing it. Wow.
Hey, look at me, man.
Yeah, totally. It's really, that victory is still kind of exciting to me, and especially even for my students, like the whole like, oh, I could never do that, and I'm like, never say never, because I'm gonna force you to do this, and I'm gonna prove you wrong, and I've proven myself wrong.
Yeah,
in that same way. It's really inspiring in itself.
Yeah, and then I mean, from there you kind of fell into the world of guitar players, bass player.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah.
How do you keep those guys happy?
Great question. The big one is the Generation Axe tour that I did, where it was me and 5 guitar players, which was Steve Vai, Yngwie, Tosin Abasi, Zach Wilde, and Nuno Bettencourt. And obviously they're all leaders in their own right. They all understood that they weren't the one leader of the band, and so they were all fairly forgiving to me to not just expect me to know everything perfectly. They would, but you kind of figure out what each one's particular vibe is. Steve Vai is an utter perfectionist, right?
And he hears everything, I guess.
And he hears everything, right? And when it's the exact part, you better play the exact part. When it's an improv-y thing, you better be improvising and answering him and listening and all that stuff. And that alone was really a great sort of boot camp in a lot of ways for that. Yngwie's stuff, you're just holding on for dear life. Like literally, he just launches into the show and his cues are kind of all over the place. And I just go and hide by my amp and kind of watch for swinging guitars around and all that stuff. And that's super fun too, because it's literally like a day at the races. Like everything, like as soon as he comes out, it's just so many notes, and like the tempos go like this once he starts playing, and me and the drummer are like, okay, here we go, and then Zach wants you to just kind of jam on some Sabbath songs. I'm like, well, he takes a long solo and wanders through the thing, so I'm hanging out in E for a good 10 minutes, and I'm like, well, I can do this too. I've done a lot of jam band things. I kind of grew up in that world. Nuno's stuff is kind of perfect little pop songs. Tosin's stuff from Animals as Leaders, I had to like make a hybrid bass part out of like some of the low guitar things and some of the other things. So it was, that's it. You kind of find, how do you keep them happy? You want to, figure out what the kind of the core of that person is and that artist. And it's usually a little simpler than it seems, you know.
Yeah.
It's people, you realize musicians are musicians. We all love doing this, and you kind of find a way to keep them happy one way or the other, and then, you know, and also keep yourself happy in some ways, you know. As we're all chameleons doing all these different things, you want to maintain some identity in there and think that you're at least putting your voice to these things. And I think I've managed to do that while also still keeping them happy, right? And that's a really interesting line to kind of balance on. The original drummer that did that gig for a little bit, and then we swapped him out because he was getting injured, was Matt Gartzka, who's also in Animals as Leaders. And he's such a creative, incredible drummer that Yngwie would be giving him these very specific instructions, and Matt would want to kind of do his thing on it, and Yngwie would be like, no. So I could see how that, you know, that Matt being so creative and so innovative couldn't really squeeze
such a kind of strong voice in his own.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of square peg in the round hole sort of thing. And then we got J.P. Bouvet, who's a fantastic drummer, and he did, I don't want to say better, he was just kind of a better fit, and just took the direction, right? And then found his ways to make himself be heard within all that. So it's always an interesting balance with those things. And that's a great question of just how do you keep them happy? Like, wow, yeah. Like,
I guess it's the same with any gig that you get booked to do. Ultimately,
right,
you're the bass player.
Yep.
It's not your name and lights, as I
right.
say a lot of times. So you
until it is, but in general.
What is the gig? What is this person expecting?
Yep.
What can I deliver?
And then a lot of that too is
too as well, you know.
And a lot of it is stage presence, you know, like how much do you want me involved? Do you want me not? You know, so that's an interesting level to find too. Like, should I be running all over the stage like you are, or should I just be hanging out? You know, and you know, you hope. I ask a lot of questions. Ultimately, I go, hey, whether it's a note thing or hey, is this okay that I'm doing that? And if they're like, yeah. And I'm like, cool, no problem. You know, I'm willing to take, you know, notes like of, you know, cool, gotcha. You know, I want to make sure that they're happy ultimately.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately as well, like you're there, but not by accident. You know,
right? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's, and that's another thing to think about. That comes up in lessons a lot. Even some of the super difficult stuff that I've done, there's a dozen to 100 other players that could do that gig. Touring, as I was saying before, is its own skill. If you're not cool, it's such a weird thing to say, but like if you're not okay to get along with, and all those times that you're not on stage and you're not a liability, and you're in the lobby when it's time to go to the airport, and you answer emails and like all this stuff, like I've been seeing this in other interviews that people are finally catching on that's as much of it as anything else. It's being a professional, right? Yeah. If you're going to be a professional musician, the musician is only half of that thing, being the professional. And a lot of times musicians are expected to not be, right? We're expected to be the guy that shows up, or something like that, or you know, took the lazy way out. But you can't do that, you know, especially now that the competition's a little not fiercer, but there are so many great players out there. They're all available to see on the internet. You know, you can. I
mean, there's so many more people in the world.
That too. Yes, exactly.
Population in the last 30 years is there's at least another billion.
Right. Yeah. So what percentage of that is bass players? But there are certainly more of them than But a lot of it too is, you know, realizing that the chops is really only a small portion of it.
It's kind of if you're there, the chops are given.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. If you got
everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So
was Paul Gilbert part of that, or was that a separate
that
thing?
came after. Yeah. And I love playing with him so much. He's just a sweetheart and a big music nerd and so much fun to hang out with. But his stuff is all of it, right? He has like the super shreddy Racer X stuff, which are, you know, undeniable riffs and stuff. But his more recent stuff is way more melodic and just really cool and kind of all over the place.
I really enjoyed one of his albums. is it silence followed by a deafening roar?
Okay,
It's
yeah.
like a white with like an elephant or a rhino on the front or something like
Yeah.
that. It's kind of raw,
Right.
funk rock.
One
almost.
of the first things I had to do with him was learn a 40-minute medley of his entire career. So he would take like the riff, the guitar solo of one song, and so that's like a minute, and then again.
Was this for audition or just part of the
No,
show?
I sort of got it through. Actually, I was living. My roommate at the time was Kevin Chown, who's another amazing bass player. He had done the album and was supposed to do the tour, and then got called to do something else. So he kind of just threw it over to me, and
knocked on your door one day.
Yeah,
"Hey,
literally.
Jordan."
He was like, I was like, "Are you kidding me? Really?" And that led to me working with Paul for a pretty long time. I'm hoping now that Mr. Big is done again, that he'll get back to his
cool.
solo stuff, because it's really amazing. And just all these guys, like watching guitar players' eyes light up knowing that I played with these dudes, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's actually really cool.
I feel like him and like Nuno and like Dime from Pantera, they all have like a certain like swagger, or they're kind of groovy
Yeah.
players,
Oh, yes.
you know?
Yeah,
so
totally.
As from a bass perspective,
Right.
I can see why you would enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Nuno's a great example of that. You
Yeah,
know?
funky as heck.
We talk about in America, like people only know like both of Paul and Nuno are the exact same world. The most popular songs of theirs are the least representative of
Yes,
their
of
actual.
their style,
yeah, you know, it's the kind of wussy ballad that the dude sings at the campfire, like because he
If we
learned it.
rose.
Like, yeah, that's a great one too. But yeah, To Be With You and all that stuff. But the rest of their stuff is, you know, Extreme in particular is like funk metal,
Yeah.
right? And then Paul's stuff is a little more shreddy or a little more bluesy and all of it. So it works all of the muscles.
Yeah.
You know, so
What would be like some of your top 5 tour tips?
wow. To be self-sufficient, like don't get bored easily. Find ways of dealing with the boredom. There is a ton of it, right? I call it low power mode. People have to like get my attention because I'm just like sitting here playing games on my phone or whatever, but it means I'm not actually bored. I'm there, I'm ready to go, you know. And staying healthy is a big one. Not getting caught up in the spectacle of it all. That can be kind of tough, because for everybody that comes to the show, this is a super special event, right? They've been thinking about this for weeks. They got the babysitter. They, maybe took tomorrow
Those
off.
guys that were there for the
meet and
sound
greet.
check stuff, I was chatting to them outside, and
Yeah.
like, they were just like so wrapped.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if that's your life every night, sleep becomes it's all that stuff. You gotta, especially as I'm getting older, you gotta make sure you take care of yourself and make sure you can do the gig, right? Despite it. And kind of one of the bummers of it, the hard thing to realize is you get to come to beautiful places like Melbourne and not really see it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm here for like 12 hours right now. I've seen it before, but still, we're staying over here in Chinatown. I want to eat at every single one of those restaurants. I want to come back and see the museums, all this stuff. Guess what? Can't really do it, so.
But maybe in a couple of months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you get lucky enough to come back. And then you also start making the list of where would I go back to?
Or where
right?
would I not go back to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But some of the guys in our camp are actually staying here a couple extra days to
cool.
make it a vacation of sorts. So yeah, so that's a big part of it. Know your gear. That's a big one too. I know so many. I've worked with so many different techs, and like they tell me I'm relatively easy because I know how my own pedal board works, and I know how what if something goes wrong, I know what that is. I don't have to go, please help, and I'm like, really? That's okay,
Right.
So
I guess maybe some guys get boards made for them.
right. And that's a higher level in some ways, but just being, again, there's a self-sufficiency to it of know that, okay, that I'm the guys in our crew make fun of me because in the middle of a show, I'll be adjusting my truss rod or something. Seriously, because I'm like, no, it's a little low and I need my action a little higher. And
Well, you were in Perth a few days ago, and the climate
right. Yep,
here would
and
be
flights and
different.
all of it. Yeah, and then even while it's sitting on stage, with it's freezing in there during the day, and then when there's all these people in there, quite warm, so that can change things too. So just kind of knowing where you like your setup and all that, and being able to get it there, and having the Allen wrenches available, which that's the part I screw up. I have a billion of them everywhere and never the right one.
And also, I've got a drawer full, but I think I've only ever bought like one set in my life.
Right.
But I have like 3.5.
Yeah. Somehow, and then for somehow it's never the right one. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was 5, but those are all pretty darn important, and staying in touch with people at home too, making sure that you're not unless you're on tour all the time, but nobody really is, So I've finally gotten to this place where I haven't done much touring in the last 5 years or so, and this year is pretty back to back, which is kind of crazy. And the downside of that is I have a pretty great roster of students at home that are now waiting for me to come back. And, maybe by then they'll have gigs and not need me anymore, because that's how bass players are.
Some of your gigs, maybe.
Who knows, which is kind of part of it too. You eventually, the whole subbing world is how I get a lot of my work. I used to think that bass players were like that movie Highlander, where there can be only one, which is true on any particular gig. So I'd meet them and kind of give them the eye and be like, why do you have that gig and I don't, and all that. And then I realized that's happening to me, and for every gig that I have, there's someone with a voodoo doll sticking pins in my hands, hoping that they can take it from me in some ways. And I realized that that's not healthy, and so they go, wow, he sounds really good on that, and that, and learn from that. And the camaraderie is way more important than the competition in a lot of ways. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then Pete Griffin's Lab Rats.
Yes.
With Gergo.
Gergo's done it. Gergo did a live show with us, and he's played on the EP that I released a couple of years ago. And he actually just sent me tracks for a new song that I'm working on. And
cool.
It's amazing. I love that guy. I worked with him with Tony McAlpine. That's how I know him. And he's become one of my best friends in the world. And he happens to be one of the best drummers in the world. I happen to know really good drummers. I'm quite lucky. More recently, because he doesn't live in America, he lives out in Spain most of the time. I had asked Chad Wackerman from Zappa's band to play with me, not expecting him to say yes. And now I have 3 gigs that we've done so far with that lineup with Chad, and he's amazing. And with Chad in particular, Gergo too, really. Yes, they have the chops and they can blow your minds, but when you're playing with them, you realize you are not playing a single note that they're not hearing and responding to, and almost like just finishing your sentences and stuff. It's really kind of incredible. And I feel like I keep saying they're making drummers really good these days, because they can all get on YouTube and learn from Gene Hoglan. The guy in this band, Freedom of Fear, who's been opening for us on this tour, freaking fantastic. He's so consistent and stuff, but I have no idea how he would do in a listening thing. He's just, a lot of them are made, not him, he's actually fantastic, but some of these ones they just recreating? Or if you were there, would it be any different if you played something different? And so that's for the Lab Rats thing, it's like right in the middle. There's some stuff I need to be the way I kind of wrote the drum part on the record, and I need the snare drums to be in certain spots. And then there are times I'm like, please do your thing.
Yeah, let's make music.
Right, yeah, and let's have it be different, so that when people see us next time, it's a complete, even if it's the same song, different experience. And a lot of that comes from the Zappa world, right? Which is again why that gig was kind of so formative for me. Was there's crazy hard written out thing in 11/8 or whatever, 1916, and then open jam in A under a guitar solo, and you have to make something happen. You can't just play A over and over again. You got to be reacting. If you listen to all those Zappa records, a lot of it is the rhythm sections it's their solo too in some ways. Like Frank's composing on the spot. His solos are really mind-blowing in that sense, where none of them are the same, and they're weird and then beautiful and then weird again. And his drummers are Vinny Colaiuta, Chad Wackerman, Terry Bozzio, all of them. They're as much a part of that, the way they're pushing it along and all that. And so me and Joe got really good with that with Dweezil, where we were able to even when we're exhausted, still make something happen in those things. And it's a really, like we were saying before about music schools and stuff, to be able to play both sides of that fence, of play the really hard thing perfectly and also something new, go. Right. I was really lucky to play with Dr. John for about 6 months, the New Orleans legend. And he would do these, he was really incredible, but he would do these pre-show kind of huddles. And he would ask the great spirit of, the New Orleans voodoo world or whatever, to help us surprise ourselves, help us play something we didn't know we could. He doesn't say, let's play a perfect show, let's play all the right notes. He goes, no, let's have this be different. Let's have this be new. And it was mind-blowing. I think of that every single time. Something like Dethklok, where our show is we press spacebar and then an hour and 7 minutes later the show's over and it's the same. But even the couple little moments where I'm like, cool, I can do this one a little different and a little shifting and stuff. That is a really great mentality to have of, what are we going to do different this time? Depends on the gig, obviously, but that one still inspires me to this day.
Have you ever done any pit work, like musical theater?
Yeah, not so much recently. I did back in college a lot, and those are fun for sure. Neely, our guitar player, works with Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, cool.
In Vegas, and and those things, there's so much grass is greener aspects to these things. I met the bass player for this one in Vegas, this really amazing show called O, where it's the water one where they're diving. It's really amazing. And I was talking to him afterwards, and I was like, man, what you're doing 2 years from now, and you got the steady paycheck, and there's health insurance and all this other stuff. And he's going to me, you're playing with different people every week, and you're learning different music all the time. And blah. I was like,
and sometimes in the I'm not sure about that one, but I know in some of the shows, the band are in a room like this.
Right.
They're not even on stage. They're just backstage, and it's just piped in.
Yeah. This one, they were visible,
Cool. Yeah.
And there's still a fair amount of improv to that. But yeah, it's just kind of funny how you think of someone having an enviable gig, and then you talk to them, and they're like, I mean, it's cool. But
yeah, there is no perfect gig, I guess, because it's either someone like this where you're on touring and you're away from home and you're not doing the home gigs, and then you get home and you're going to have to build up a bit of momentum again.
Yep.
Or you're, kind of like Cirque du Soleil, where it's regular and booked, but you can't do the other stuff,
Yeah.
Tough balance.
Yeah.
What do you have coming up for the rest of the year?
Wow. Yeah. This is a crazy couple of months. So I get home from this, I have 2 days, and then I go into rehearsal with Barry McCreary, who is a big time TV and movie composer. And he put out a solo record last year called The Singularity that is mind blowing. It's, and he called in all these, favors from Serge from System of a Down is on it. Jens from Meshuggah is on a song. Corey from Slipknot's on a song. Rufus Wainwright is on a song. It's not just metal. It's Gene Hoglan played all over it.
Oh, wow.
So he's doing his first tour ever. So he's doing a bunch of stuff for that, but he also has rearranged some of his more famous themes, like Walking Dead and that video game God of War. And he did Masters of the Universe, the He-Man show.
I'm sure he did some stuff for the Lord of the Rings.
Yes, that most recent one.
Yeah.
To the point where on this upcoming tour, I have to do lead vocals for the first time in my life on a song that Jens from Meshuggah originally did. So I get to do metal vocals for the song about a troll from Lord of the Rings.
I remember seeing it. I was like, this is great. I was like, the music is like, this is some serious
heavy.
metal.
Yeah. It's really cool. And I've just never had to do that. And he asked, because obviously we're not.
You're doing backing vocals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been doing it sort of behind the scenes for a while, and he knew that, and he was like, "Hey man, so we're not going to bring Jens out to do one song, Do you think you could do it? And the word yes came out of my mouth before I was like, well, I've never done that before. I was like, no, yes, let's do this. Okay, cool. So he kind of called my bluff.
That's an extra like $10 a show, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I can get a double fee. Yeah, but that'll be exciting, and the music's great, and we're actually coming back here. So we go to Europe with that, home for a little bit, and then we do US. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I actually just picked up a couple gigs with Blind Melon, who are their second album. Their first album's amazing too, but their second album is literally one of the most influential albums on me in my entire life. I got it when I was like 15 or 16. Okay. Kind of learned to play bass to it in some ways, and then randomly had my name thrown in the hat for that. So after learning all this death metal stuff and all that, I have to learn backing vocals for that. And it's kind of all over the place, but it's all very exciting. I'm super grateful for all of it. And then there's more Dethklok stuff where we're going to Europe with that. And that's literally all in the next 3 months or so. And then back home, and I do a lot of gigs around town. I'll try to do some more stuff with my band. I play weddings, which is great. In town work means I don't have to take tours I don't want to do. Yeah. And it's super high end weddings, so they treat us well and they fly us all over for it and stuff. So it's not as onerous as it could. It's people kind of look down on wedding bands, and I'm like, no, it's another thing that uses all of my skills. Right, it's the reading, it's the jamming, it's slap, it's pick, it's everything.
And if it's a good band,
the band is killer, right? And we're all, it's like the trumpet player from the Eagles and the sax player from Phil Collins, and it's when they're not on tour with those guys in LA, that's kind of what you do. So it keeps me busy and keeps me learning more stuff. And what's really great too is it forces me to be current. Like I keep having to learn new pop songs and and once upon a time I was a little snooty about it, and I'm like, no, these are great songs, and especially ones that have a great bass line. Anytime I'm like, when our singers like turn to our leaders like, oh, what do you guys want to do? I'm like, any of the Dua Lipa songs, because the bass line is like such an integral part of the song, and some of the Bruno Mars stuff and all of that.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a resurgence in kind of the disco funk stuff.
Yeah, the Jamiroquai-ish kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the Sabrina Carpenter song,
right? Yeah,
that's kind of groovy.
Yeah, exactly. And the bass isn't an afterthought. It's kind of driving the thing. Yeah, it's a sub hook. Exactly. Yeah. So it's great. I'm very happy to have all these different irons going on, and hopefully a lot of it will just kind of keep going.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it's a testament to for one person to have that broad of a skill set and be able to pull it off on these stages. I mean, it's impressive, man.
Wow, thanks for that.
There's not many people could do all of that stuff with the real people that are doing it. Yeah, and you are. So
yeah, thanks, man.
That's huge.
A lot of it is the big question I get is like, how do you remember all of it, right? And it's not just a matter of learning it; it's the like recall after the fact and all of that.
Because you might not be able to learn it before the thing happens, or you have to learn it before that tour for the other band, and then
that's what's happening. Yeah, I while I'm out with Bear, I'm going to be learning Blind Melon stuff and all, Wow, yeah. But I've really found lead time is really helpful. The more time you start getting it in, listening to it without the instrument, even once you've learned it. Because a lot of times what you think happens, a lot of times you think the second verse is the same as the first, and it's not. And when you're playing along, you never
hear that little...
Right. So when you're checking it out on your headphones, walking around, you go, oh, damn, he actually drops out for that thing, or he goes a higher, So making sure that you're not just so focused on patterns and assuming that it just doubles that.
It's too professional, man. Too professional.
that's what you try. I'm also very, very lucky. It's such a strange world, and it's still very up and down. The first 3 months of this year, I did very little. Just because a lot of it was waiting for this to happen, and the scheduling thing is also a lucky dice roll. Ultimately,
things come out, you're like, I can't. I'm already
exactly
out doing that.
Right. The Blind Melon is playing at Red Rocks, which is this gorgeous venue in Colorado, which is a bucket list place for me. I will be on tour in Europe with Bear at that point, so it can't happen, or in America or something. So I was like, but they're still cool. And most bands these days are realizing, I think the COVID thing helped with this. You need kind of the roster of people. Like you need the first call, second call, third call, because people are going to be busy, and unless you're a band that will pay someo's entire mortgage through the year,
or whatever,
which doesn't exist anymore in my world. As far I'd love for it to, but I've never been really offered a retainer. So you have to understand that good musicians are going to be busy, and if when you call on them, and that's another thing about the camaraderie thing, I can then go, oh, I can't do it. Here's 3 other people's names.
Yeah.
Right. And hopefully
and then
one
the
of
next
them
time
will.
they can't do it,
Exactly.
they might call you.
Right. Yeah. So you're not losing the gig. It's a lot more sort of.
You're postponing it.
Sort of sharing. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You're like, hold this for me for a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's really cool, and there's that really, it does come around. Like it's very circular. Like that. So.
Cool, man. I can't wait to check out the show tonight.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, you brought earplugs, I hope.
I do, yeah. They're
good.
in my pocket.
Good. Dude, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.